Meg, hello. Thank you so much for coming here to join me to talk about your new middle grade novel, The Girl in the Walls. And I think this book celebrates the beautiful and the different. So, will you just give a short synopsis of what your book's about?
So The Girl on the Walls is about V, an artistic, sock collecting girl who loves being neurodivergent and strange and wonderful, but she's stuck with her grandma Jojo, who's everything but that, who only cares about her house looking perfect and her carpet staying white. So it's a miserable summer until V finds a ghost in her grandmother's walls, and that ghost invites her to prank this difficult grandmother. Those pranks start out as fun and harmless at first, but they become more and more sinister over time until V has to decide, is this really a friend or an enemy? And how do I make things beautiful out of something awful and ugly?
Can you talk a little bit about why you decided to move into the slightly supernatural world with this one, and what you wanted readers to get away from this book that's different than your first book?
At first, it was a similar process to Good Different of taking an experience that was difficult and painful and trying to write about it. But when I tried to write about it literally, like I did with Good Different, that process was not effective. It was just ugly and awful and painful. So I tried to do like Emily Dickinson says and tell it slant. And so I thought, well, how can we find something interesting and joyful and fun in this? And so through that process, there was the question of, well, what if there was a ghost? What if there was this magical element, this world inside the walls? And so it just went from there. That was helping lift up the difficult, painful material into something accessible for me and hopefully also then for younger readers.
I'm also wondering what you wanted readers to take away from this novel that they may
Mm.
not have gotten from your first book.
I think one of the biggest things is that feelings are so important. They're like a fire alarm that you hear them, they tell you that there's something going on that needs paying attention to. But at the same time, um, feelings can be unreliable narrators. And so we have to take them in stride and we have to kind of take them with discernment. But then the other thing I think that's really important to me in the story is that people are messy, that we often want to put people into a category based on a single experience, that this person's great, this person's awful. And often people are way more complicated. And there can be people in our lives that love us, but they can also hurt us. And trying to figure out how to reconcile with those different sides of people and figure out how to accept the good and set healthy boundaries with the things that maybe aren't so good was really, really important to me.
You've mentioned that the first bit of inspiration for this book was a photo that you found in an antique store years ago. Will you describe that photo for us and then talk about how the photo led to the book you ended up writing?
Often I like going to antique stores and exploring those vintage photos in those bins. But one really struck me. It was this sepia photo of a white girl staring at the camera, and it said, written in handwriting at the bottom, "Our broken doll." And that broke my heart, and it just opened up so many questions for me as a creative of what's the story behind this photo, why was this girl called broken? Clearly this was someone related to her, it's probably her parents that called her broken, our broken doll. And so what happened, who taught those parents that whatever was happening to this child deemed her broken? Did this child ever know that she was considered broken?
I think that fear of being broken and everything you're describing leads to shame, and shame leads to secrets. This book also focuses on how everyone has secrets and past hurts and a backstory, maybe a hidden backstory.
Autism is quite genetic in it's how it's passed down. And so often a kid's told, well, I don't know where this came from, but if we look at the family history, there's quite likely lots of autistic ancestors before them who probably were given even more difficult messaging than kids are now about what it means to be different. And people have coped in different ways. And so I think the intergenerational aspect was super important to me for this story, because if we don't identify and acknowledge hurtful patterns in our lineage? How are we going to overcome them and create something different?
So this book is written in verse, and what you do is you create an overarching story, but you also have all these very individual, beautiful poems. And so I'm curious as a writer, kind of what you want each individual poem to achieve versus how they're contributing to the overall story.
I think of each poem as a scene or a moment within a scene where there is some sort of internal arc. So I think of every poem as having an aha moment where my character is discovering something. She's connecting to things that maybe she didn't otherwise. Maybe she's making a game plan for what the next thing's going to be. And so each moment that I'm having that discovery, or I think my character's having a discovery, that feels like its own complete poem to me.
Well, thank you for joining me here today, Meg, and for talking about your amazing new middle grade novel in verse, The Girl in the Walls.
Thanks so much for having me, Emily.